The scripture reading today is Matthew 5:43 and 44. You have heard that it was said, you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Thank you, Chad. You may be seated. I can see I got my work cut out for me today. I'll put it in second gear and talk real fast. No, that's okay. So, Marge, we're doing like a catechism class, and this is about our 14th week on this, and we're doing it in sections. So today we're on Matthew 18 section, which we went over Matthew 18 last week, but today, as a subsection of Matthew 18, I want to talk about, it's our faith and obedience that we're talking about in this subsection. And I want to talk about the brethren's stance for peace. Now, we don't talk about that a lot here, and we probably should talk about it more. But there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The Church of the Brethren has a core stance that war is sin and incompatible with the teachings of Jesus Christ. The Church of the Brethren is known as one of the historic peace churches. The big three are the Church of the Brethren, including all the Brethren offshoots of that, and the Religious Society of Friends, which is Quakers, and the Mennonites. And the Mennonites, under that section, includes the Amish, and I didn't realize that till I did this. And the Beachy Amish, the Old Order Mennonites, and the Conservative Mennonites. Those are the big three sections. And in addition to those is the Hutteran Brethren, the River Brethren. River would like that, wherever she is. And the Apostolic Christian Church and the Bruderhof are all historic peace churches. Now, in my research, there was another big one. The Assembly of God used to be in that category, and they had so much division within, they dropped out of that category. And I thought that was interesting. And the reason I'll bring this up now, because a big part of the Church of the Brethren doesn't follow the teachings of the Church of the Brethren. So, and the Church of the Brethren is sort of okay with that. So, if you've been in the military or know people in the military, you're allowed to be a part of the Church of the Brethren, and you're welcome. Now, maybe not in all churches. Maybe you're not welcome. A lot of churches would not allow a flag to be in the church, and it's that separation. And I'm going to hypothesize here that it's the leaders of the Church of the Brethren that want to keep a focus on that historic peace witness to try to guide everybody else at that focus. And we know what leaders do when they get a focus. It can, in other areas, it can throw things off, but that's another problem. Okay, we affirm seeking peace in human relationships and oppose the taking of human life by all forms of violence. So, I got some verses here, and I'm going to ask you on each one, how do each of these verses speak to peace? Okay, Matthew 5:21-22, you have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, if you are angry with your brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. What does that say to you about peace? God brings justice down to those that hate people. Okay? Anybody ever been called a fool by somebody else? Maybe other names. If you insult somebody or call them a fool, you show a very much lack of respect for or value for that person. Now, one of the things our skit was supposed to, if you caught it in our skit, one of the things that showed you in our skit was how easy it is for a disagreement to escalate and get bigger and worse all the time. Words turn into actions, turn into wars. Matthew 5:43 to 44. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I'll shortcut it. If all people followed Jesus, there would be no more wars. But alas, few people follow Jesus. So, I'm going to skip one. Okay, he said to them, when I sent you out without a purse, bag, or sandal, did you lack anything? They said, no, not a thing. He said to them, but now the one who has a purse must take it, and likewise a bag, and the one who has no sword must sell his cloak and buy one. For I tell you, this scripture must be fulfilled in me. And he was counted among the lawless, and indeed, what is written about me is being fulfilled. And they said, look, Lord, there are 2 swords. And he replied, it is enough. Jesus tells them to go buy a sword. So a lot of people, this verse has been misused a lot, telling people to go out and buy a sword or a weapon or whatever like that. So what might that verse mean? You didn't answer fast enough, so I'll keep moving. Notice that right after Jesus says, by a sword, he quotes Isaiah 53:12, which predicts that Jesus would be counted among the lawless. Then the disciples reveal that they have already had 2 swords, to which Jesus says, enough. Rome only crucified those who were a potential threat to the empire. For Jesus to be crucified, Rome would have to convict him as a potential revolutionary. And this is the point of the swords. With swords in their possession, Jesus and his disciples would be viewed as potential revolutionaries against Rome, and would therefore fulfill the prophecy in Isaiah 53 that put him among the lawless, because he's a revolutionary. Up until Luke 22, Jesus has prohibited his followers from using violence, even in self-defense. So is Jesus changing his mind by telling them to use a sword in self-defense? It seems better to suggest that Jesus is providing Rome with evidence to put him on the cross. It's highly unlikely that Jesus is encouraging violent self-defense. In fact, just a few verses later, Peter wields one of 2 swords, and Jesus rebukes him and says, no more of that. Because remember, Peter cuts off an ear, and then Jesus says, stop, and he puts the ear back on. So Peter, along with some interpreters, misunderstood Jesus' previous command to buy a sword. And remember, when Jesus rebuked Peter, it wasn't just because Jesus needed to suffer and die. He followed his rebuke with a category statement about guns and violence, or violence. Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. And there's another sword verse in Matthew 10, but we're going to skip that, and that's where Jesus says, I've come to bring peace. I've not come to bring peace, but I've come to bring a sword. And again, people might use that saying violence, but it's not a call to arms. It means love Jesus above all else. And that perspective, if you love Jesus above all else, then that will guide you to how to love those around us.
And we need to stand up for, like we learned in Sunday school this morning. We need to stand up for that which is godly.
Yeah.
Don't let them take it away from us.
Stand up. I missed Sunday school. Sorry, I was traveling back and forth, but yeah. Whatever Dwayne said, you can just believe that.
I remember that.
So I got to skip quite a bit here about the selective service. When it was founded for World War I, it did provide for conscientious objectors, but even though you were conscientious, they made you serve in the military, like carrying water or doing something as part of the army. And a lot of people didn't like that and got thrown in jail because they didn't like serving the military. So after World War I, the historic peace churches got together and got with Teddy Roosevelt, and they come up with a plan called civilian public service. And the civilian public service, you had to do something for the national good, and you could serve in there instead of serving in the military. And the interesting part, and this is for Linda, as part, there's several things you could do there, smoke jumpers and work in the field or dairy later. But one of the things, they worked as mental hospital attendants because there was a severe shortage of men to work. So they put these CPS guys in mental hospitals to work there. And then it became a side benefit. They sparked a revolution in mental health care because nobody really cared about that before, but here's all these church guys going into the mental health situation and helping with mental health. And we all know that mental health needs a lot of help. So that improved conditions. Sue.
I graduated with a boy who was over in Minneapolis at the hospital as a nurse. And he was a very good Christian. He stood between a man and his wife who had been beat up by the husband, and the husband shot him right there.
Great.
Killed him. But he stood up. So
At least he stood up, yeah.
And I can say my dad and her dad both served civilian public service. So that was a big thing back in World War II. That they wanted to serve the country, but in their heart they couldn't kill someone.
Yeah.
So it's between God and the person on one direction, but and then they had alternative service. I think during Vietnam War, but it just gives an option to believers.
And once they set it up, then women did get involved. It was set up for men, and you didn't get paid. You volunteered your time. You didn't get paid. So in 1948, at an annual conference, the kids interrupted the conference and said, "We need something like this for us." And it was a big deal. You don't normally have kids interrupt a conference. And that's where BVS comes out of, which stands for Brethren Volunteer Service. It came out of that conference. So we skipped a bunch. Anybody know who that's a picture of? Ted Studebaker. I went to school with him. John went to school with him over at West Milton. And he's a martyr for the peace cause. He was in BVS and went to Vietnam and worked with the Vietnamese, helping improve their farming stuff. And the Northern Viet Cong come in and shot him one night, and that was it. It was like a week or two after he got married, and they come in and shot him up. So, well, I have to skip that too. So my brother-in-law was in the Army. Actually, my brother was in the Navy. My oldest brother was in the Navy. My next brother had a high draft number, and my number, or they quit the draft about a week before they would have chose me. So, my brother-in-law served in the Army, and he would come home on leave and tell us stories about his escapades in the Army, and they weren't good. I don't know that he told all the family some of these stories, but he told me, and of a lot of the things he did that involved death of an enemy. And his plan was to be a lifer in the Army, but he contracted MS, multiple sclerosis, and they forced him out of the Army, and he was very angry with the Army for forcing him out. But he wondered what to do next. So we kind of hung around a little bit. He worked with us in our business for a while, and I was going to Bethany, and he said, I want to try that. So he spent he started going to Bethany with me, and we'd have these conversations back and forth. Well, Bethany was a little too progressive for him, and he said, I can't take this, and he dropped out. But he did start to realize what he had done and what was involved in fighting in the things he did in the Army. And after that, he began to promote pacifism. So he had a complete change of heart after he got home. So there isn't a good thing I'm going to tell you one way or the other. We need police. We need, just look at the picture of Ukraine. What do you do if some evil country starts invading? You got to have something. But guns are not going to solve the problem. You don't read the Messenger, but there was an article in Messenger about Cliff Kennedy, who was a Christian peacemakers team he was on, that talks about all the different things he tried to do in his life to promote peace. And some of them were sort of successful, and some of them weren't. But he still did what he could. And we all need to figure out how to promote peace, whether it's about fighting a war over there or dealing with our neighbor. And don't let things escalate from dice to arm wrestling to guns.
We need to distinguish between murder and kill.
We need to distinguish between murder and kill. And Prager does a really good job of that if you read his books. The Ten Commandments say do not murder. And he does a real good job, and I don't have time to explain that right now. So,
And the Church of God, I went down to Bible college in Cincinnati. Their stance was called just war theology. And what just war theology is, the military should be strictly defensive only.
yeah.
And never be aggressive to protect and make peace. So, like I said, in different denominations, there's so many different avenues on this. But the thing is, we can't forget what we're really about, and that's the kingdom.
Right. Right. So, sort of like my brother-in-law, if you take Jesus in your heart, your lives are going to make a difference in some way. And maybe it's, some of us don't agree with what's going on in the Church of the Brethren with on earth peace right now. But you need Jesus first, and that you're going to make a difference in how you live if you have Jesus in your heart. So our last song is Christian, Let Your Burning Light. Christian, let your burning light shine on all with luster bright. Let your words and deeds be pure, all for Christ you must endure. Christian, let your light shine all along the way. You may lead the wanderer to eternal day. You may save from endless night if you let your lamp burn bright. As you journey here below, shed a ray where'er you go. Find in this your pure delight. Let your light shine clear and bright. Christian, let your light shine all along your way. You may guide a wanderer to eternal day. You may save from endless night if you let your lamp burn bright. Let your light may guide you through. Brightly let it shine anew. Keep up courage, never fail, till you're safe within the veil. Christian, let your light shine all along your way. You may guide a wanderer to eternal day. You may save from endless night if you let your lamp burn bright. I apologize for rushing through peace. Some, especially more progressive pastors, might spend months on that subject, and we spent 15 minutes. And I also say I was partially raised by a guy that was involved, I think it was Korea, I'm not sure which one, but he was a pacifist, and he was abused by the military and didn't serve time, but went through quite a bit of abuse. And I know about those stories. I know the stories of the military. We need direction from God. And if you want to talk more about this, you can come and talk to me, and I'll help you work through that. But the big thing is we need direction from God for all our lives. So go and seek God first. Amen.